So in my last Nike versus Adidas versus Reebok video, I compared their more premium cross-training shoes. In this video that was inspired by a comment on that video, I'm going to be comparing some of their premium HIIT shoes. So these are all shoes that are designed for HIIT workouts, classes, full body sessions, just general sessions in the gym. So we have the Nike Free Metcon 6, the Adidas RapidMove ADV 2, and then we have the Reebok Nano Gym. So four major differences to keep in mind between these shoes before you buy is number one, their midsole materials and how that is going to feel for your training. So when we think about their midsoles, think about them as being on a spectrum of more plush to a little bit more dense or a little bit more poppy or responsive with their feeling. The softest midsole up here is going to be the Reebok Nano Gym. The middle is going to be the Nike Free Metcon 6. And then the denser or more responsive midsole, in my opinion, is from the RapidMove ADV 2. Now, when we look at the midsole materials, we have the Nike Free Tech over here in the Free Metcon 6. This gives the shoe a lot of flexibility through the forefoot here. Now that can be problematic, and I mentioned this in my full review, is for example, if you're doing really heavy sled pushes in the shoe on turf, these rubber outsole lugs can bite and actually pull this midsole apart. So while it is the medium density midsole, it can be a little bit prone to durability issues here and there. Now, have I noticed any further issues with this shoe's midsole past that one instance? No, and I do think it is decently durable. However, there is that limitation, so keep that in mind. But if you want a shoe that's going to have a nice blend of a plusher, more comfortable ride, but also being dense enough for some moderate strength work, the Free Metcon 6 can feel really great. The RapidMove ADV 2 features the Lightstrike Pro midsole. Now this midsole is going to be the densest of the three shoes up here. So that means when you're doing jump rope, plyos and whatnot, you get a little bit more ground feedback with this shoe. You also have the torsion system here that interjects into the midfoot that gives this model, I would argue, a slightly more power focused feel when training. You can do some light to moderate strength stuff in this shoe, but I think it also feels the best for plyos if you want a little bit more ground feedback and density under your feet. The Nano Gym is going to have the softest midsole. So similar to the Free Metcon 6, it also has these grooves up here. I haven't had durability issues with this model, but I will say you'll notice the compression of this shoe a little bit more for your lifting needs. And so that said, the Nano Gym is pretty dang comfortable. However, there are some issues I find with the sizing, which I'll talk about, which limit its comfort despite having a pretty soft ride under it. The second major difference to keep in mind is their widths and their fits. And this is really big to think about before you invest in one of these shoes. So with the Free Metcon 6, you're gonna have one of the wider builds up here compared to the ADV 2 here and the Nano Gym. The Nano Gym is going to be the most narrow. There is a pretty aggressive taper in this toe box, and there's a bit of arch support. So if you don't love any form of arch in your shoes, steer clear of the Nano Gym. And if you have wider feet, so think 2E width or wider, the Nano Gym will also feel wicked snug for your needs. In the ADV 2, you have a decently wide forefoot, but there is a really aggressive taper here in the midfoot with some arch support. So that said, if you have a wider forefoot, think E to double E, you should be fine in this shoe, but if you hate any form of arch support, you're gonna wanna steer clear of this model as well. The Free Metcon 6 feels the widest. It also has a decent upper volume up here compared to the Nike Free Metcon 5 and 4, which could feel a little bit snugger at times to the forefoot. Now I will say, with the Free Metcon 6, you are still gonna have some arch support, so if you have flatter feet, you might wanna consider that. And then also with the Free Metcon 6, with this booty style construction, there's not a lot of stretch to it. So if you have exceptionally thick feet or high insteps, you'll also likely wanna steer clear of the Free Metcon 6. The third major difference to note is their outsole constructions, because this is going to be big to how you train and how you want to use these shoes. So looking at these shoes, for the most part, they have rubber treads where you need them. So in the Free Metcon 6, let's start with this model, you have a rubber tread that covers the forefoot, midfoot, and heel. Honestly, I like this tread a lot more than the tread that was in the 4 and 5. But with the durability issue, it kind of hinders the performance of the shoe in total. And that's why I've also started to kind of miss my 5, and I think a lot of other folks do. I feel like if the 5 had this tread patterning and less durability issues, we would be cooking with gas. But the Free Metcon 6 does a good job with grip overall. On turf and whatnot, it grips really great. On rubber gym floors, wooden platforms, etc., it does a great job. Again, though, just be very conscious of the movements you're doing with this outsole biting into turf. Into ADV 2, you also have a full rubber tread here for the most part. You do have some grooves here in the midfoot and up here in the forefoot, but when it comes to grip on turf and other surfaces, this model also does really good. So both of these shoes I would take as top performers for grip. However, the Free Metcon 6 does have a tiny bit more bite just because that rubber is a little softer compared to the Continental rubber here in the ADV 2, which does a decent job with grip, but it's definitely a little bit more dense with its feeling compared to the softer, grippier rubber in the Free Metcon 6. In the Nano Gym, you have a rubber tread that covers the forefoot and heel, and then you have a lot of exposed foam in the midfoot. Honestly, I don't love the tread in this shoe. It does a decent job on most surfaces, but with this midfoot being so exposed, it's going to have some durability issues in my opinion if you're wearing them all day outside or if you're in inclement weather. So if you are somebody who trains on turf regularly and you want a little bit more grip for your training sessions, go for Metcon 6 or ADV 2 over the Nano Gym. The fourth major difference to note between these shoes is their heel to toe drops and how that's going to feel for your training. So in the Nano Gym, you have an 8mm drop. Honestly, with the narrow fit and the high drop of the shoe, I just feel awkward in them. I almost feel kind of pitched forward. It's not my favorite HIIT shoe from Reebok to date. And so if you like having a flatter foot for your training, or if you just don't like having a little bit more of that pitch forward feel, definitely consider that with the Nano Gym and probably go with the free Metcon 6 or the ADV 2. Now with these two models, they do not disclose the heel to toe drops. And when I reach out to both of their support teams, they both kind of give me roundabout answers and they don't really know. However, if I had to guess, and based on the endless shoe reviews that I have done, both of these shoes are probably around 3 to 5mm if I had to take a guess. I believe that's what they've been before. The ADV 2 might actually be a 6 because it does feel a smidge higher with the heel compared to the free Metcon 6. But if you do want a lower drop or more of a drop that is aligned with other cross-training shoes, the free Metcon 6 and the ADV 2 will be your go-to calls here. The free Metcon 6, I will say, feels the flattest, but do note when I say that, that's like 3 to 5mm compared to the 8mm and likely the like 3 to 5, maybe 6mm in the ADV2. But now let's talk about the performance of these models. All right, so now let's discuss how these shoes do for lifting, cross training and HIIT, short runs, daily wear, and general comfort. So when it comes to lifting, which is gonna be the best model for that? That's where I'm gonna give the edge to the Nike Free Metcon 6. Because despite having that more mid-tier midsole feel and having a little bit more plushness compared to the Lightstrike Pro here, it has the widest base. And so if you want a shoe for blending HIIT and class style workouts with heavier strength stuff, the free Metcon 6 will be the best of these three. I have loaded up to 365 in the shoe and I have been fine. Now you will start to notice compression when you go above that 275, 315 pound range, so keep that in mind. But I've seen plenty of people lift heavy in the free Metcon 6 and be just fine. And so if we're comparing the stability of these shoes for lifting purposes, free Metcon 6 takes the edge here. The second shoe is gonna be the ADV 2, and then the Nano Gym will come in third place. Now why is this shoe second and not first despite having a denser midsole? It's because it has a slightly higher stack height, a narrower heel, and a very aggressive midfoot. This kind of hinders this shoe's ability to stabilize in my opinion, especially for single leg work. So for example, when getting above 225 in this shoe, you start to notice it more. And that's not necessarily because the midsole is outright compressing and going crazy with stability, but because you have a higher platform, you just don't feel as stable. The Nano Gym is taking my third pick because once again, it does have the softest midsole of these three. And with its higher heel to toe drop and narrow toe box, I just don't love them for lifting because one, you can't sway the toes as well, and two, you're always kind of pitched forward with this 8mm drop. Now, which model is best for HIIT workouts and cross training? That's where I'm gonna give the edge to the ADV2 here. This model, I think, feels the most lively on the feet. If you are doing class workouts and you're doing a lot of lateral movements or a lot of plyos, so think tuck jumps, box jumps, jump rope, etc., this model feels awesome. And if you like a denser midsole and a little bit more stability through the midfoot because you do have this torsion system to ground yourself when doing these types of workouts, this model can feel really good on the feet. My only gripe with this shoe is the boot security. It can be an issue for narrower heels. I talk about that in my full review, so definitely check that out if that sounds like you. The free Metcon 6 would be my second pick here. It does a pretty good job across the board. Honestly, if it didn't have that durability issue, I would put these shoes neck and neck, but because I do have some limitations in this model when it comes to cross training and versatile style workouts or athletic style workouts, I can't give the shoe the number one in this category, but the free Metcon 6 does an exceptional job in my opinion for most cross-training and HIIT workout settings. The Nano Gym is taking my third pick, and I feel bad beating up on the Nano Gym here, but it's just not as strong of a shoe compared to these two. Will it get the job done for cross-training and HIIT workouts? Yes. It is plenty responsive and soft and plush enough for that, but again, I think there are just things with this shoe that are a little bit off. Also, with the upper in this shoe, it's a little bit more loose, so you do get some spillover, and because we have a narrow toe box, wider feet can be a little bit more prone to having spillover when doing lateral movement in the Nano Gym, which hinders its performance for multi-directional work in HIIT and cross training sessions. All right, so now when it comes to short runs, walking, and just general comfort, which is best? So for short runs, I'm gonna give the edge to the ADV2 here from Adidas. This model I think feels the most lively for this context. You also have a bit of a heel bevel here to help mitigate any form of stress from a heel strike gait, if that sounds like you. But what I like most about this shoe is if you're doing shorter interval runs and you're heavily on the forefoot and midfoot, this shoe feels awesome. You get a lot of ground feedback and energy return from this model. The free Metcon 6 does a decent job as well. I like to do intervals from 400 to 1,000 meters in this shoe. It does a decent job for that, and that flexible forefoot really feeds into that style of running. The Nano Gym also can work for that distance, but again, the overall fit and feel of this shoe just hurts this shoe's overall performance and feel on the feet for most activities, in my opinion. Now, when it comes to daily wear and comfort, which model is the most comfortable? I'm going to give the edge to the free Metcon 6, despite having a slightly denser midsole than the Nano Gym, and that has to do with the width of the forefoot and how its midfoot is less aggressive. The ADV2 can be decent, but again, this arch can start to feel a little bit annoying, especially for wider feet or if you have a flatter foot, so definitely keep that in mind. The Nano Gym is also pretty comfortable if you have a narrow foot, but if you have a wide foot, again, steer clear of this shoe. All right, now let's break down the sizing and fit differences of these shoes. So in all of these models, if you have narrow feet, you should be safe going true to size in these shoes. If you have medium width feet, you also should be safe going true to size in these models. Now, if you have an E to double E width foot, the Nike Free Metcon 6 is going to be your best bet, and the Adidas RapidMove ADV2 can also work if you don't mind a bit of arch support. With the Reebok Nano Gym, I think they will work for E width feet, but if you have a double E width foot or wider, I would say probably steer clear of this shoe. And even if you size up, I don't think you're going to have enough width in the toe box of this model with its taper. Now, if you have flatter feet and you don't like any form of arch, I would say steer clear of the RapidMove ADV2. The free Metcon 6 will be the most forgiving, and then Reebok Nano Gym can also be hit or miss depending on your foot anatomy. And if you do need an option that can work for this context, it does it a little bit better for flatter feet. The Innovate F-Lite can be an awesome option to go with, and it has a slightly wider toe box. All right, y'all, that wraps up this breakdown of the Nike Free Metcon 6, the Adidas RapidMove ADV2, and the Reebok Nano Gym. If you have additional questions on any of these models and which you should go with, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.